Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. The title of today's episode. Oh, I forgot to update the picture. Okay, anyways. The title of today's episode is When the Hands of Nature Hold You. And so I want to talk about a playful concept where I call foreverness. And what that means is that we're creatures that function through stories. These stories become our life. The character you see in the world you see has become you. Now, what to do? The reason I chose the picture for today's episode is because in this picture, I see man finding himself in greater systems of intelligence. That's what nature is in some sense. It is how our world is in some sense communicating to us. And we're taking this communication of the natural world and we're making it into the laws of science, into the theories of philosophy, into, in some sense, the dreams of religion. We are taking the world and we are shaping it differently in our mind, and in that different shape of a world, we're being the individual that is walking through. I wanted to share some of my personal experiences with nature. And usually, what I consider to be divine is, in some sense, how the world moves before my eyes shape it. And that is a sort of revelation. I find that revelation is just a momentary phenomenon, that our attention through a sort of structure and accumulated knowledge begins to reshape the unknown in however way the explorer enters that world. Ralph Waldo Emerson has this very nice quote where he says, "Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience." And Aristotle, we have Aristotle saying, "In all things of nature, there is something of the marvelous." I find the purpose of nature and the purpose of evolution is that an individual consciousness finds itself in limitation. When it finds its limits, when you can recognize what you don't know, most people are judging their intelligence based on what they know. But believe it or not, you access different aspects, and especially different. It's like many. You know how they say we're using 10% of our brain, 10 to 12%, like dolphins use 20 or whatnot. I find that greater access to the brain is not done through individual consciousness. Individual consciousness is 10% of your intelligence, you know? And the greater dimensions of your intelligence actually are based on how you conceive the dimensions, how you keep the access of the world for you. And there have been days that I have interpreted nature's movement as fury and wrath, and there have been moments where I've observed nature in ways that it seems it was designed with peace, with a sort of peace in mind. There is a sort of stability, a sort of unique, profound, transcendental balance in creation. We have a quote from Lord Byron. He says, "There is pleasure in the pathless woods. There is rapture in the lonely shore. There is society where none intrudes. By the deep sea and music in its roar, I love not man the less, but nature more." And that is the crucial point, that we have to remember that we are natural creatures. And nature follows its collective law. The whole system influences us, not just a part of it. When the sun's light is entering your eyes, do you know how far that light is traveling? Do you know from another part of space, we can look at our civilization, you know, you could be in a different galaxy, and the type of galaxy we see is like, I don't know, like some people say like 200 million, uh, 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 how can I say it? It's like if we were to see a civilization from another galaxy, that's the light of that galaxy reaching our eyes. It's as if like we are seeing that we are naturally 200 million before of that galaxy. Its collective law. The whole system influences us, not just a part of it. The sun. Okay, there we go. My talk is interrupting my talk. You know, it's kind of fun. And nature does truly hold your intelligence. I consider that the way we can access nature is through our presence, not through our personality. Your presence is, in some sense, how the unknown moves your knowledge. Your personality is how knowledge moves the unknown. That means internally you are kind of like the god of your thoughts. Your attention is the god of your thoughts. Wherever your attention goes, the world becomes to become animated in some way. That means how life is animated to us, how life, we see meaning in it. We don't just see objects. We see these objects in subjective worlds behind our eyes. These subjective worlds are constantly changing, and they change not only in accordance to biological shifts, but they also change in accordance to recognition, to realization, to a comprehension that it is only through stillness that we observe the greatest movements, and it is only through the greatest movements that we can see the secrets found in stillness, in silence. When you stop being yourself, something funny happens. You recognize you are what you have always been. And and then contentment and peace and serenity arise. A person can experience serenity. Buddhists, like, you tell me your past history. The Buddhist went to a the Buddhist went to a job interview, and the job interviewer told me, "Tell me about your history," you know. And the Buddhist said, "Which lifetime you want to know about?" The mind can advance in ways where the previous senses of self suddenly fade. It's as if the same way a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, the idea of you in your childhood has now become the experience of who you are now. Anne Frank has this incredible quote. She says, "The best remedy for those who are afraid, lonely, or unhappy is to go outside, somewhere where they can be quiet, alone with the heavens, nature, and God. Because only then does one feel that all is as it should be. When you can appreciate the macrocosm, the microcosm is very gracefully entered." And so, trust me, a lot of life has to do with how your attention is being kept in the moment. When the teacher said pay attention in class, that teacher was not showing the importance of attention. That teacher was just giving a command, as if some people teach in ways where they feel the other person has to get it just by hearing it. For me, a true teacher is a mirror, and a true teacher stays as a mirror until the student sees they are their own teacher. Because we're not here trying to create followers. It's not that kind of game. You cannot follow someone into heaven. You have to build heaven through your own clarity and recognition of who you are as a self in this moment. And so what happens is, if you take the intellectual approach, that means you are attaining your certainty from your subjective realm before your objective realm. That means thoughts have become the rulers of man. And sometimes I see this. In 2019, I am telling you, we are still pioneers. We think we're evolved. We think we're advanced. We think we're civilized. But people will see us from, years later, and they will be like, what foolish creatures dwell on this earth. We were foolish because we only saw a part of life and not all of it. We valued only what was outside. We cared for people's physical rights, but we did not care for people's inner existence. And so a lot of cause of suicide is, in some sense, like when a person uses a wrong bridge, they have not seen the value of the bridge to walk on it properly. And so that is the value of life, that people can, in some sense, whenever you think you are a thought, you can be manipulated instantaneously. It's so easy. But when you know yourself beyond the thoughts of the past and the thoughts of the future, because the present is a gift that must be opened at its own time. Marcus Aurelius tells us the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore, guard accordingly and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to your virtue, unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature. Because nature was, reason developed because man could see intelligence in the other. Most people think that the world they see is the world that's here. No, we each start off in our own worlds, and then through the confrontations and experiences through life, you begin to resculpt, reshape what you thought into what is. And then comes great certainty. Then comes the comprehension and the understanding and the value of liberty, freedom. You see the value of honesty when you have been tormented by endless illusions for a while. That's when you will care. That's when you will stop being a bewildered beast. When you realize you never were one. When you realize there's a part of your attention that stands eternally, gazing upon the temporal changes that never stop, as if the only thing that doesn't change is change. And so when the hands of nature hold you, that means you must accept, in some sense, how the world moves as much as you are moving in the world. You know, I could, there are certain moments that I will tell you, I have even thought, like, if somebody saw my behavior in certain moments, they would think I'm very strange. They would not see it, because I have bowed to nature. I have walked alone in nature and seen a sort of harmony, seen an efficiency that our species is missing out on. You go and see fish under the water, they go in groups. They are in some sense care for their responsibility to abide by collective rhythms of their species. And we have built a civilization that, unfortunately, our only allegiance for now is through thoughts. We cannot, because we don't have each other's eyes, we in some sense do not understand the emotions, the worlds that we are walking in. And so sometimes a friend can only be a distant call for you to step out of your own world. And oh my God, the concept of guilt is tormenting the species like crazy. Because our ancestors told us not to do some stuff and we did it, and now we're like, oh shit. The only resolution to guilt is conscious responsibility. That's it. You can just respond with consciousness. And consciousness is something I did not value. When people said, I didn't think consciousness was important. Believe it or not, because I could not conceptualize it when I was young. I mean, I had an idea. I said, okay, there's something like a soul. Yeah, yeah, man, I'm a soul. So whenever you think you're a soul, you're not convinced by just what you see in the mirror. The hands of nature become how the unconscious elements of your mind are influencing your consciousness. And the subconscious is a bridge between the unconscious. That means there is a way that you can be, your attention can be present where your intelligence is not segmented. But because it is not segmented, it gets an incredible ability to shift itself into various forms. So think of it this way: we are thinking that evolution is a sort of cycle of movement, of growth, where something is imperfect, and it, through the challenges and its response and free will in the moment, it in some sense moves to higher levels of perfection. That means light was only coming from the sun until Edison made the light bulb. Until that, I don't know who was the first guy who found the candle. I don't know. Whoever it was wise to, you know, a liberated soul sent to help with the gears of civilization. For me, when I speak, guys, I'm not just speaking to you, who's a living being here. I'm speaking in the presence of all that our ancestry, all that humanity lived for. I cannot avoid it. I cannot avoid what your ancestry lived for and what my ancestry lived for. I cannot avoid that there were human beings on this earth, that they saw a greater earth. Yet how far did their children's children listen? How far could they? Do you see, sometimes a species is too young to mess with? Like, you can't disturb a child when it's playing. That child is growing its intelligence when it plays. And so our species, unfortunately, it's a young species. We have recently opened our eyes, even though it took us 4 billion years. We say that from bacteria or whatever it came to be this. Even before that, it has taken a long way. And scientists, even I was hearing Carl saying it, and I'm like, what the hell? How is it that scientists are bashing atheists, but then they look at the sky and they say we are star stuff? You believe you are made of stars, yet you deny those who think that there is a creator to the world. You see, for me, it is thoughts are controlling us. It is not people, because people control you with the thoughts that they give you. So one can conclude that if you find yourself in an individually conscious position, if you think that you're a temporary form uh, that is manifest for a little while, you will see that your imagination will always be eternal. This is why scientists don't have creativity, because the concept of eternity has been rejected. Any being who can see the limitless and the limitation has been free before they needed to be. Martin Luther. That means nature holds within it a very profound integrative intelligence. Evolution was an opportunity for the world to shape the creature. William Blake tells us the tree which moves some to tears of joy is in the eyes of others only a green thing that stands in the way. Some see nature all ridicule and deformity, and some scarce see nature at all. But to the eyes of the man of imagination, nature is imagination itself. And I would probably give a high five to William Blake, because I've said this: nature is like organized imagination. It's given reality, given design. So the uniqueness of where we find ourselves as self-aware beings is that we find ourselves in a world of data, and we have somehow evolved into a creature that organizes this data. Now it has organized this data to a point where it has thought it was the only thing that's here, but now it has come to see that what it thought it was is the process of everything happening at once. And this is why I believe religions, they have accomplished their purpose to keep the unknown alive, to say that no man can shape God, to keep an unknown X factor alive in a world that's constantly trying to believe in data as truth. You can believe in data, you can get whatever evidence, but the world changes so much that your evidence will require to change. That means the scientist will never be satisfied. The scientist is on an infinite search. So science cannot put a story to the world. It cannot give a certain setting. It cannot provide a narrative, but it can add to the narratives that exist, and it can explain the worlds of other domains of imagination. That means one child thinks that the world is made of, let's say, energy. Another child feels the world is the mind of God. Okay? Now, these two children, whatever data enters their awareness, their spherical awareness, it reshapes them. Whatever enters, in some sense, pushes aside some part of the old world you know. This is why children are the hope of humanity, because they won't see the mistakes that we dwelled in for so long. They will live in a world that does not have that problem. Rabindranath Tagore says this incredible quote. Rabindranath Tagore was an Indian polymath, and I believe he met Einstein too. And he was an incredible mind. That means he could. It was as if he had created this world the way he knew this world. You know, he knew his mind very well. So Rabindranath Tagore tells us the butterfly counts not months but moments and has time enough. That means when you go ask these ancient, like I looked into this, guys, I wondered, okay, what is this enlightenment thing that people are talking about in yogic culture, Vedic culture, and many other mystical cultures? Why do esoteric communities to exist? Because they feel there is an illusion here, and they have to secretly find a way out. That is the problem with conspiracy. You're already in prison, before you can even wonder if you're in prison or not. Alexander Hamilton tells us there is a certain enthusiasm in liberty that makes human nature rise above itself in acts of bravery and heroism. What it means is that when you care for the inner and outer freedom of others, you have indirectly and subconsciously given yourself that freedom. When you live for others, it will provide you in moments where you feel your life has the greatest value. Because we are all temporary memories, but what we contribute to this world will live on longer than us. And that's the point. We fight for continuity till our last breath. And in doing so, through the illusion of empty infinities, the hand of God has become the free will of man. You see, God gave its creature, if you entertain a religious perspective, an ability to make a mistake. No angels could make mistakes. Angels were already in heaven. It was man who stepped into the unknown. And so many people in the religious context, I find this is the confusion. They interpret religion in an unnecessary way. They think that they fell from greatness. They fell from heaven, and now they have to find their way back. For me, it's not from imperfection to perfection. It's perfection that saw the perfection. You stepped down from higher dimensions into the here. But you did not step with feet. You were the movement of nature that decided to breathe. Ralph Waldo Emerson tells us every particular in nature, a leaf, a drop, a crystal, a moment of time, is related to the whole and partakes of the perfection of the whole. So, those people who entertain the concept of the source of the universe being with them, which was the religious mentality, they allowed themselves not to be an effect of their environment. Do you see? We don't go towards an idea unless we feel somehow deep down it helps us. So those people who are believing, on some level, we can get rid of all our internal conflicts between members among the species by recognizing that we are not shapes. We are an attention to shape. We are our whole moment. We're not just our body. That means, we will move from this era of disputes where people are just holding on to beliefs and using them as swords and fighting in a battlefield of, anguish. You need chaos to evolve the order for a prison. Do you see what I mean? So the system will require some aspect of itself to be incomplete, so its completion evolves. For me, this is evolution. Evolution has been a sort of unique attention within a creature that has become more responsible of how it exists, as if we have been here on this species. The eyes of your DNA are ancient, and they are the same eyes that you look to now. That you are a chemical reaction in the unknown. You are an ability to see something that many beings who have not been born, many people who have not been born, and those people who have left can no longer see. You are given your moment, as if like you went on a vacation, you booked a hotel, but this hotel was a lifetime on Earth. You are a visitor from the unknown that has entered a known dimension. Use your senses and use ideas as tools. Don't believe in ideas. You're not a thought. I'm declaring this so loudly. I'm saying we're not thoughts, guys. Even though we understand ourselves as thoughts, it's as if we need shapes to be shapes. And because the world is filled with data, we have, in some sense, defined ourselves based on data. But I am saying that our knowledge is like a ship on an ocean. And if it has holes, we will recognize the intelligence of the whole, their gear, and like a SWAT team go to handle that kind of conflict of, let's say you get a cut or something. So you see, nature aligns itself, and what people think is their individual karma is not their individual karma. It is how an organism is realigning itself. Just like how you wash yourself a face in the morning, consciousness reawakens to the world endlessly. Albert Einstein tells us our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole nature, and the whole of nature and its beauty. So Einstein, the man who came with one of the greatest equations, E equals mc squared, how light and energy can now be seen in a relationship. Light, energy, and mass. Albert Einstein saw the whole of nature as beautiful. And any being who begins to see the beauty of the collective, they will live healthy. You will live in a way where your civilization cannot forget you because you are living for it. That means imagine somebody came to you right now and was endlessly just supporting you without any question. Anything you wanted, they provided. Imagine a sort of, you know how some New Age circles acknowledge the concept of angels and whatnot, even religious circles. So imagine an angel that endlessly gives. As if when people in Islam, there's one of the immediate words for prayer is in the name of the God that is all merciful and all benevolent. So the first thought that enters your mind in prayer is that the truth of the world is peaceful and it does not crush you with judgment. So, in some sense, we can say hell was man made, but not heaven. The heavens are here before we were. It is us that have made our concept of earth and have made our concept of hell because we choose to refer to the world rather than to acknowledge our being in it. You see, you look at the word human being. If you take that as two dimensions of existence, the human dimension, which is based on form, structure, and nature's path, of how it moves. And then you have the being aspect. So a part of your intelligence is constantly trying to do things, but a part of your intelligence also needs to be. It just needs to restore its energy. And that's what meditation was, to in some sense navigate the pilot of consciousness out of the clouds of confusion into the clear grounds of clarity. You are a pilot of your intelligence as the moment. And not only you are being the moment, but the moment is being you. Our true relationship with the world is found in our consciousness of it. And our consciousness immediately tells us, just like in this moment right now, I have a physical body, I'm acknowledging this, I'm hitting my knee, and I can see I am a form. I am a sort of shaped phenomena. But I see this shaped phenomena, I'm like, why is this shaped phenomena here? And my mind goes to this point that I see what is looking throughout my eyes. It's like we say we have free will, and then we say we are only the processes of nature and the brain is just neurons. Isn't it ridiculous? I think science's ultimate conclusion is that we are an illusion of people. That is science's ultimate conclusion because it has given the fundamental positioning of facts to the lifeless view of the world. And I am a fan of science. You don't understand how for me, I can listen to 10 hours, rather than seeing 10 movies on, random stuff, I am willing, the more you see the world clearly, the more you can see its beauty. Because there's nothing worse than an elusive beauty. And you can see this in relationships. I have talked to people, and I have even been, when I was younger, don't think like I'm standing on some higher chair when I'm speaking, guys. I consider myself just somebody who something in life pushed. I felt I was pushed by nature into an unavoidable recognition that I am nature. And when I became aware, you don't understand, there's a feeling you can get when you're at a house party of your closest friends, people who are your greatest allies, people who you can see living in kingdoms with, And in some sense, there's that kind of sense of community, a kind of allegiance of the human spirit in motion. And then there's a kind of same way of sense of community I've personally felt when I've gone into nature alone. And when I remember, for me, rivers have a sort of playful mind to them. Nature has a mind. It's just not like ours, as we think it at least. So what I'm trying to say is that I've gone into nature in my solitude and loneliness, and I have not felt lonely. I have felt I have been alive with all that is alive. You don't understand what kind of inner peace that gives you. It slaps away the concept and it just allows you to be with your world for a little. That's our job, and I don't understand, how people can just feel like a parent only to their own child. You see, we are kind, but in domains of selfishness. And when the domains of selfishness change, because you realize it's just an how your attention is applied to the moment that is you. Be brave, dear listener. Forget words and really be in your world. What greater teaching is there? Harriet Ann Jacobs tells us the beautiful spring came, and when nature resumes her loveliness, the human soul is apt to revive also. We didn't understand. This is what we're missing out on as creatures. We thought the Industrial Revolution made us think that thoughts know better than a sort of humble, momentary existence. We must teach our thoughts to behave like nature, or the world will be lifeless. I thought of like this was a task I had, like this was like in 2015, I got a vision of a very important thing that needs to be done for our species. And we have to, scientists have to, one, be merciful enough and compassionate enough and honorable enough to try to relate science to as much as they can to the human body. That means, like, just by some person in school learning about the human body, they learn every other branch of knowledge. And if education on this planet can do this, you don't understand. Health will be the dictator, not the dictator. Health will be the director of our decisions. Because when we stop caring for nature, we have choked ourselves out. In a world where our ignorance was too juicy for us to sacrifice for our clarity, we have declared war on our atmosphere. And so our atmosphere looks upon us as if for eons I have shielded you and now you attack me. The world is here. We just need to see it. And that's the fucked up part. That we see ourselves before we see the world. And that is why we don't care for it. And how do we care for it? It's not like our societies have incredible systems where the human being feels honored to live in society. I am so dishonored when I walk into society. I break. Because I'll be honest, it's like, of course it's a cruel world. We're animals on some level, I get it. But on some level, when you see defeat, you have to step up. But don't do for life what it can do for itself. Because then you have interfered with its free will. Just like we say, what if like there's this very playful kind of sci-fi like theory that says that aliens don't intervene with us. Like, well, I think it was in what was it? Honestly, I forget it, but it had to do with the Prime Command or the Prime Meridian. I don't know what it is, but in Star Trek, they had this idea where you cannot interfere with an evolving species at its early phases because it needs to make its own decisions. And that's the thing. We have to grow into an ability to acknowledge the world in better ways. This is why children who want to grow up too soon will realize a sort of folly in their pursuit. Because they have to enjoy every moment. You can get overwhelmed by data. This has happened to me. And you know what I do when I get overwhelmed by data? I put my palm on my forehead. And it's not like I'm shaking my head, but I'm just like, I put my palm in my forehead because it's like I'm putting my how can I tell you? I'm putting my hand in front of the projector light, and the world can be very overwhelming, especially through mysticism. It was so overwhelming that the being would begin to lose sight of the laws of nature, but will be so pulled by the unknown that they will no longer exist as an individual. That is Mahasamadhi. Mahasamadhi is when individual consciousness has found content as forever being the collective. Margaret D. Nadald, Margaret D. Nadald, she says it is, I don't know who this woman is, but she has a very interesting quote that I'm actually reading now. She says, "It is a holy blessing to be born with the exquisite qualities of a daughter of God. Women of God, both old and young, are spiritual and sensitive, tender and gentle. They have a kind, nurturing nature. This is your inheritance. Never belittle the gifts God has given to you. Develop the divinity that is within you." Damn, that's incredible. The last sentence was like the cherry on the cake. Develop the divinity that is within you. Honestly, thank you, Robert. So, guys, if you don't like the concept of God, just replace it with nature. So, this woman is saying something